afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. It's nice to see some people from the previous session back again. I'm not surprised you're here because this is a really special occasion. For those of you who weren't at the previous session, my name's Loretta Roberts. I am the co-founder and editor-in-chief of the Industry.Fashion, and I've been given the happy task of interviewing the living legend that is Stuart Trevor. Stuart, welcome to Source. Thanks for doing this.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone, for coming. And nice to be here.
I think a number of people in this audience know who you are because I've seen a bit of air kissing and hugging going on already, Stuart, but probably best known as the founder of All Saints. But we're here to talk about your more recent venture, which is named after yourself, Stuart Trevor. But before we get into that, could you perhaps give the audience a bit of a potted history on your storied career in fashion, please?
Yeah, okay, so...
you in?
In my ear. I studied fashion at Nottingham Trent, and I came in here today, and I have memories of being here as like a 17, 18-year-old kid, and we did a student menswear design award competition that showed down here during this used to be like a really important fashion venue.
It was the original London Fashion Week was staged here, wasn't it? Back in the day.
40 years ago. So it's kind of like nice that Source is here, because I don't know, have they been doing the place up?
There's a lot of building work going on.
But it's really great. I remember coming here as well when I was about 18. I won a Smirnoff Fashion Awards. It was at the Royal Albert Hall, and the Menswear Day Award was presented by Vivienne Westwood, and I had also been approached by Paul Smith to go and do an internship with him over the summer.
Wow.
But David Rees from Rees, the high street
the
chain,
Rees,
REISS, he rang the college 14 times and asked for me to come and see him, and I didn't really want to go and work for him. I wanted to work for Paul Smith.
Paul Smith, yeah.
But I was told I have to go by the head of Nottingham Trent. I have to go and see him, on behalf of the uni. And I came down to London. I met David Rees, and I got. He had the #1 shop on the King's Road.
Yeah.
It was quite a big deal, and he basically persuaded me to go off to Florence in Italy, and I went there, and he asked me what all the big looks for next winter were, and they never taught you anything about that at school.
Really?
And I just described one of the external tutors, and I talked about, trousers with little zips in and a hoodie, and it's kind of weird, but we're talking about 1985, and hoodies didn't exist. It's the world's #1 selling garment now.
Yeah.
So I had to describe a hoodie to David Rees. So I was like, it's like a cardigan, but it's got a hood like a parka, but it's got a zip, and it's made from knitted fabric, but it's not knitwear. It's like a sweatshirt, and it's got knitted cuffs, and it has little strings, and it has like a kangaroo, and it sounds ridiculous, but no one knew what a hoodie was, and David was like, yeah, it sounds great. and then we went around all the shops in Florence. I remember waiting for him. He was in the hotel, and I was just thinking, well, at least I got a trip to Italy out of it, because I don't know.
Nothing else.
I've got no idea what I'm talking about. And we went around all the shops, and all the top designers in the world had all the things I described: the trousers, the zips, and the hoodie, and he was like, "God, this boy's a genius!"
Absolute soothsayer of fashion.
And I ended up there for 10 years and completely created the whole of the look for it. So, which was interesting.
Yeah.
And during that 10 years...
What was it he saw in you? Just out of curiosity, you must have seen something from your student shows. I mean, it's incredible. What did he say?
The Smirnoff stuff that I did, it was quite interesting, actually. What I always, even at that young age, used to look at garments and try and do something interesting. And I can even show you if I take this jacket off and turn it inside out, you will see that it has a really interesting interior.
Yeah.
And so what I did with the Smirnoff and the stuff I did for Paul Smith is I took those seams from the inside and that yoke from the back, and I put that on the outside of the garment. And both Paul Smith and David Rees fell in love. They'd never
Yeah.
They just thought it was really innovative.
Yeah.
It's kind of simplest thing ever, but you know, it seems simple to do
Taking
now.
a different view of things, you know. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's you know, I have quite severe ADHD, so I look at everything slightly differently than most people, and I kind of notice details, or but it's something that I talk to about any of the students that I have that come and work with me is, you know, creativity. Often you shouldn't. No one sits in a room and designs, like draws pictures of things and makes it up in their head.
Yeah.
Virtually every designer in the world looks at other garments, vintage pieces, things that they've collected over the years, and analyse them and look at the inside and the finishing, and then think about taking, I don't know, the pockets off of this jacket or the seaming around the buttons and putting that onto another jacket or something. Yeah. And that was why that's basically how I was noticed by people like Paul Smith and Reese. And it was kind of funny that they both had a bit of a fight over me. But I met up with Paul.
Isn't it? A flex, I think we call that these days, don't we? God, to have
well, David Reese actually bought me a £795 red Gaultier double-breasted jacket while I was in Florence.
Yeah.
If I was prepared to tell Paul Smith to go away, and I bought that jacket. That jacket changed my life. It got me into every one of the best. Back in those days, I was like 18, 19. The number one thing was to get into nightclubs like the Bandouche in Paris, and that jacket just guaranteed you entrance everywhere.
It's like your VIP ticket.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
That's a pair of clothing, right? Isn't it? That's what we're here to talk about.
As Vivienne Westwood says, or used to say, you know, if you wear interesting clothes, you'll have an interesting life.
And you've always made interesting clothes then. So how did we get from the Gaultier red jacket and nightclubbing to setting up All Saints?
So I had been, while I was with Reese, we used to, in the beginning, we used to make everything in Italy or England primarily. And I met up with some guys who flew over from New York, and they had production in Hong Kong. And I said to David Reese, let's go to Hong Kong. He was like, don't be stupid, they won't make anything for us out there. These are huge factories. But I was convinced that we could find what we wanted. And we went there, and I found the best factories in the world that were making stuff for Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren and Donna Karan and all Stone Island CP Company. And they started working with me. I did collections for them. I did parkas and flak jackets, military sort of stuff, and denim jackets, but made them out of silk and different things that you couldn't make in Europe. I did in Hong Kong. This was, we're going back to 1989, and during that period I worked with these factories, and they had all the designers from Ralph Lauren, Calvin Klein. They all came there and saw what I was doing, and basically I started getting offers from different people to go and work there. One of the offers was a factory that was doing about 10 million turnover in the UK, and they offered me 10% of turnover if I would come and represent them. So I said, well, my maths is not very good, but I worked out, God, if they've got that much money, I have a business plan, and I showed them the business plan for All Saints, and they agreed to do it. So we launched the first collection, and we took it to Paris Fashion Week, and we sold over 2 million in the first season, and they were expecting to sell about a couple of £100,000, and they were completely blown away. They actually had to put their properties up for collateral in order to fund it, and but we managed to produce it, and we delivered it, and everyone sold out of it, and then we just kept going from there.
How would you describe the aesthetic of that brand when you first set it up? It was quite rock and roll, I think, wasn't it?
So it was basically, I talk quite a bit to younger generation about what it's like and how I set up All Saints. And people ask me all the time, what was your number one inspiration? Where did you get all the ideas from? I got to tell you that my greatest inspiration was my teenage self. I grew up in an era where rock music and pop music, we had bands coming out like Depeche Mode and The Cure and The Human League and David Bowie and Adam Ant and Kate Bush and Toya and Bananarama and Funboy Free, and every week, because there was no internet. We didn't have the phones. We didn't have Instagram or social media. You used to watch Top of the Pops on a Thursday, and you would look at magazines like Smash Hits that had what the pop stars or whatever were wearing, and of course I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be David Bowie, and so I was inspired by what Duran Duran were wearing, what Roxy Music were wearing, and things like that.
They were also self-created. I don't know if I'm using the right expression, weren't they? But they weren't styled, were they? They had their own vision about what they wanted to look like, those bands, and it all felt very DIY. And I loved that about that era.
Yeah, some of it was. Some of it, there were designers like Anthony Price that styled Roxy Music, and then there was Vivienne Westwood, that Adamant. Got his pirate
Joe Casey
look from.
Hayford did a few of those bands as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of really, and there were young designers then that I really loved, like Catherine Hamnett and Vivienne Westwood and Paul Smith and things like that. So, but they weren't doing what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was like the sort of things that I wanted to be. David Bowie. I wanted to be a rock star, so I wanted to create clothes that someone like that would wear. And very fortunately, in my life, I've managed to meet so many of them and dress so many of them. And
amazing.
That's little me starstruck, wanting to, it was fun.
You've had such an interesting life, haven't you? Before I ask you about Stuart, I've got to ask you then, who have you dressed that's exciting? Who was the most exciting one that you dressed? Or
bands-wise?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think
I don't know.
actually,
Any personality.
I mean, I've dressed from Depeche Mode to Placebo to Snow Patrol to and then I dressed Kasabian for the front cover of the NME, and
Amazing.
they wore the white suits that I made them and styled them. They wore it to the what's it called, Teenage Cancer Trust, and they met Roger Daltrey from The Who, and he rang me to say that he had something really big coming up, and I can't tell you what it is. It's a secret, and it's top secret. I'm sworn to secrecy and all that. And I asked him, what is it? And he said, it's the Super Bowl. And so he came to meet me, and he made me take off my jacket I was wearing, and he put it on. And he started going like this. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And he was like, what do you think I'm doing?
Got to move in it, isn't he?
Well, he was swinging the mic. Because he swings the mic and catches it and then carries on singing. And he wore that for the Super Bowl, and then I dressed him again for the closing ceremony of the Olympics. So, and the Who are quite, obviously up there with the Rolling Stones.
They really are.
I dressed the Rolling Stones as well.
And you did those as well.
So, anyway.
What a life, Stuart. What a life. So you sold All Saints, and your latest venture, Stuart Trevor.
Yeah.
How did that come into being? Because I understand it was more of an accident as much as anything else.
Yeah, it was basically I had for 5 years been mentoring young startup brands that have a positive social or environmental impact, and I learned a lot about the fashion industry, about statistics like every 7 minutes there's a pile of clothes the height of Mount Everest going into landfill.
It's horrifying,
if the fashion business what was classed as a country, it would be third behind China and USA in carbon emissions. 150 billion garments a year in production. That's more than 20 per human being on the planet every year, and that's including, people in Gaza, people in Africa that can't afford to feed their kids or whatever. It's just a joke. And the rise of fast fashion over the last 10, 20 years, and mobile phones, people are obsessed with them, and billionaire corporations brainwashing us and our kids into believing that we don't have enough. And we've all got wardrobes full of clothes that we don't know what to do with, or we you put on weight, or you don't. You go off of things, and people don't know what to do with it, and there's a huge problem. So I was working with a young lady that had a denim company. She was taking vintage Levi's, customizing them, and reselling them, and I took another company that was Esther from Fashion Feb label. And I was working with another company called The Circle, which they encourage women to clear out their wardrobes.
Yes, I know them,
and they photograph the clothes on each other and they put it online, and you can clear out your wardrobe, and you can set up an account and earn money from selling off all your old clothes. And it's great. There's loads of other small businesses like that. And I took these businesses to meet investors, and these investors were like, they're great. They're great. Why don't you do another brand? And I was like, the last thing the world needs another clothing brand. And they were like, but I love what you're wearing. Yeah. And I was like, well, I only wear vintage. And they were like, but I love all these patches. And I'd done all these things like this duffel coat. I'd taken a traditional English duffel coat and I'd added patches to it, like this. I printed them in a little printers in East London, and cool. I pin them on. I get a little tailor to sew them on. That's David Bowie wearing Alexander McQueen's Dante's Inferno's mask with Jesus Christ on the cross, and there's my logo, and that's actually David Bowie. It's a mugshot of David Bowie when he was arrested in 1979. And I just, anyway, these guys were like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And I'm like, it was actually some things that I'd done with my daughters over lockdown, my mother taught me to sew when I was a kid, so I was trying to teach them, how to upcycle clothes, thinking one of them might want to do it. And I went away after about 5 or 6 different people had asked me, the same investors. I was like, what about a clothing brand that doesn't produce any clothes? Why don't we get people to clear out their wardrobes and bring the stuff to me? I also, when I was at Reese and when I was at Allsaints, I used to go to these vintage military warehouses or markets, and I would find things like a vintage duffel coat or a vintage Lee jacket or Levi jacket, and I would take them to factories and fabric mills and ask them to copy the fabric. This one is about 40 years old, but it's got really beautiful, soft. It feels like it's brushed. It's got some ridges in it.
It's got almost a grain, and it's lovely the way you've got it going
it's
this way and
beautiful.
that way. It's just really, really considered, isn't it? It's really nice.
But it wasn't. Do you know what? This is how they used to make clothes. And unfortunately, they don't make them as beautifully anymore. Lee doesn't. Their current jackets are not as beautiful as this. So I used to take these jackets to the factories and fabric mills and ask them to copy it with these ridges, little details like that. And I suddenly thought, so I used to go and buy these things to get the creative juice flowing. And now I thought, what about if I just sell these direct to people, and these become the creative juice? So now, I mean, the warehouses that I was going to with all the military stuff, they're bigger than this hall, and they are full of military clothes or dead stock denim and things like this. There's millions of garments. So my mission is to empty those warehouses out, and so we launched it about a year and a half ago. And in the last 8 weeks, everything just kind of went mental. We did, push it on social media, and we have. But I've been doing a talk like this every 2 weeks at universities, at private members clubs, at corporate dues, at wealth management funds, just talking non-stop about this.
And that generates the sales, obviously.
People go away and go online and sign up and tell their kids about it, and it's funny. Quite often, it's the kids that are like, "Mum, Dad, I love this. Can you get me something?" So we had a lot of Christmas sales for people buying it for their kids. I have a little patch on the back of everything, and I sign my name on it, and I write the date, and if you're the model, I would write Loretta on it. And
cool.
The idea came from that is if Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaren had signed the goods that they produced when they created the Sex Pistols in
could you imagine?
Late 1979, those garments are worth £20,000, £30,000. They'd be worth 2-3 million pounds.
Yeah,
So we
exactly.
keep telling people, buy something from stuarttrevor.com. I'll sign it, and it'll be worth 2 million quid in 10
Well, let's
years.
hope so.
Who knows?
That's why that's how you're generating. So we're all like that. Okay, we'll just
Where's my phone?
one of those when I get off this stage. You sort of answered one of my questions there, really, because one of the things I was thinking about is this a scalable model? And because the session before we were talking about responsible growth, but there seems to be endless amounts of this stock because you're not going to run out of it anytime soon.
I had, so a year and a half ago when I set it up, I had friends of mine that used to run Diesel, that used to run All Saints, Ted Baker, Reese, people from Next and Marks and Spencer's even came to see me, and they were all like, how are you going to scale this? And I'm like, what do you mean? They're going, where are you going to get the clothes from? And I just laughed at them and said, guys, you've been in the business for 30 years. The biggest issue that any fashion business has is they have so much stock they don't know what to do with. And so the last thing I have to worry about is where I'm going to get the clothes from. Even the US military alone spend $5 billion a year on clothing. And that's every single year since 1945. There are millions of pieces out there that are sitting there and people don't know what to do with them. So, and I did, when I started a year and a half ago, and I went into this warehouse, some of it is gone. So but I just go move on to another box and find something else and then start doing a run of that.
And so what you're doing, you're customizing it. Who's doing that customization? It's in London, I understand.
Yeah, I do it all in, I primarily do it myself, but I can sew, but it takes me a long time, and there's a lot of swearing involved. So so I have a really good tailor, and I just pin the goods on. And in the beginning, I used to pin on each one, and then now I have quite a few interns from different colleges that come in and do a couple of weeks or a couple of days a week, and I'll show them what I want, or even let them do a couple of bits themselves, and and the tailor then now also knows if there are things that we have repeated, he knows how to do it.
Yes.
But it's all done in the East End of London.
And if we went onto your website and we liked something and it wasn't in stock, are you making on demand? Is it?
A lot of it is made on demand. There's a nightclub in Berlin called Berghain, and it's the coolest nightclub in the world, and we sort of joke that we are like the Berghain of sustainable fashion, because sometimes you have to wait and all that, and people queue for hours to get in there.
That's so
and sometimes you, unfortunately, and I write little emails to everyone and say, really, really sorry, but we are creating this exclusively for you, so you're going to have to give us a couple of weeks. We started out with this, what about a clothing brand that doesn't produce any clothes? But then I was going to these little factories and getting the patches sewn on, and they were begging me for, can I give them some work? They had a load of dead stock fabric, so we made a small run of like duffel coats and things like that. I think.
But that fabric already existed.
That fabric exists, and the factory. I'll do everything I can to support.
Use up what's already there.
Any business that has a sustainable sort of like a local business. I'll try and do everything I can to help them.
And I understand as well with things like T-shirts, because obviously upcycling vintage T-shirts is quite difficult to do that on any sort of scale, because they may not be in great condition, but you're using T-shirts that again already exist.
Yeah, we do have vintage T-shirts, and we add our labels to them, the little one I sign, and I sometimes print over them. But we realised with we have open events at our studio in Hoxton that people are welcome to come to. If they contact us on Instagram or follow us on a Stuart Trevor official, they'll see when we have events and they can come along. We found out that a lot of people they're not going to wear a T-shirt somebody's been wearing every day for 20 years.
No.
We realised things like essentials, like no one's going to wear, obviously, second-hand underwear or second-hand socks.
Anything that's really quite close to your body is quite...
So next to your body that you sweat in or whatever, T-shirts, hoodie. So we found the most sustainable option, which is a company that produce them from 50% recycled cotton and 50% organic GOTS certified cotton.
Yeah.
The quality is unbelievable. There's no polyester in it whatsoever. Even the thread is that they sew it together with is cotton. Polyester is the worst fabric that exists, and mixed fibers like cotton poly or woolen poly. As soon as you add the mix of fiber, it makes it impossible for them to recycle it. So we completely avoid any man-made fibers,
really?
And we recommend that everyone should do that. But we do make the t-shirts. They're really beautiful quality, but they already exist. There are companies that produce. You know, Taylor Swift comes around. She needs 150,000 white t-shirts. They have to make 200,000, and they ring me up going, "I've got 1,000 white t-shirts. What do you want them? We're going to get rid of them."
Yeah,
so
sense.
There are t-shirt companies that come to me and give me or sell me off their old stock, so we don't produce it ourselves because there are minimum dye lots and huge quantities required, and I don't produce huge quantities of anything. We will do if all of a sudden we're receiving. We receive on average about 10 orders a day now, 20 orders a day. If we start receiving 100 orders a day, then I'll have to look at how do I service that, because my ambition is, to encourage more and more people to buy from sustainable brands and to buy something that already exists, something that's, we've taken and customized and upcycled. As you can see, if anyone saw the show earlier, it's amazing what you can do with clothes that already exist.
Exactly.
And they don't have to be. We usually add something to it and create something. We're kind of trying to create a walking work of art with every garment. And so, there's a little bit going on, but maybe not too much.
It's interesting. I'm thinking about you being inspired by your teenage self when you first started out, and that was in that era for me, post-punk, punk, where it was very DIY, wasn't it? It was about...
Well, we used to go to jumble sales and charity shops.
And I'm thinking now, do you see the teenagers of today almost getting back to that, having gone through this very sort of intense period of overconsumption of cheap fashion? Do you see that?
I believe there is a certain demographic out there. I believe it's all about Gen Z. My kids are 17, 20 and 25. They do not wear anything but vintage. They won't even, and it's not just them, all their little friends, they don't even socialise with people that will shop at Shein, Temu, Zara, H&M,
it's sort of seen
Primark,
as socially
whatever.
unacceptable.
There's a social divide where, my daughter had a kid came round wearing a Supreme puffer, going, "Oh, your dad would love this," and she went, "He would not. I'm sorry, but I'm not. I want to
don't show
go
him
away." And she wouldn't even socialise. They wouldn't even go out with
That's
them.
interesting, because not so long ago I was walking through Soho and there were queues around the block for Supreme, for example. But
there are still going to be.
And
there are still going to be some people that get obsessed with things like that. But I think that the barometer has swung towards, and it will, more and more kids will realise that they don't need. I mean, I did a podcast the other day, and I was like, who wakes up in the morning and goes, "I can't wait to go to Primark and get a £5 t-shirt"? It's kind of like no one values cheap clothes, do they? I mean, yes, okay, great. When it came out, the idea that you could go and buy an outfit from somewhere like Primark, whatever, Zara, for £10, £20 and look great, it was great. But the problem is now, people don't value those garments, do they? They just end up in the bottom of the wardrobe or, under the bed, or they don't value things. I want to go back to when I was a kid, and I used to look, we didn't have any of those retail shops or online shopping. We used to get Littlewood's catalogue, and I would find the Levi's page, and I'd be like, when I've made it, I'm going to have a pair of Levi's jeans and a pair of Levi's trucker jacket, and I'll know that I've made it. And I think, and then when I did get those pieces, I used to treasure them and sleep with them under my pillow. They were my favourite garments. And I think we need to go back to having favourites, and as Vivienne Westwood said, we should buy less, choose well, and wear it for life.
Absolutely.
I think I love that quote. She was so far ahead of her time.
No, she was. But actually, it's not just teenagers, isn't it? You're seeing it now that consumers of all ages are incorporating rented items, resold items. They're reselling their own clothing now. It has shifted, hasn't it?
I did a talk yesterday with My Wardrobe,
Yeah.
and the CEO from My Wardrobe was there. And there's a lady, a woman there who used to work at Vogue, and loads of styling, loads of stuff. And everyone there was 4 other people, Maria Gretsch-Vogel, the designer. Everybody there was wearing something from a charity shop or vintage or mixed in with their outfit.
Yeah.
And everyone talks about the woman from Vogue was talking about how she realised a couple of years ago that, you know, and I saw an old friend of mine who was the fashion editor from the Sunday Times and the FT, and we were at Pitti Uomo in Florence, and we were walking around wearing vintage clothes, and Italians were coming up to us going, "Oh my God, this is amazing what you're wearing."
So
and he said to me, "I feel like I'm on a merry-go-round of disaster, and it's about to spin out of control, and we're all going to end up thrown against the walls, and we need to get off this merry-go-round."
It's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was basically saying he absolutely loved what me and the boys I was with and the girls I was with were wearing, and it was everything I wear has existed from you know, years and years, and it's possible to create really incredible looking, style it up, and you know, you can even go in your old wardrobe and fall in love with stuff that you already own.
It's a nice thing. It's a nice thing to do.
We encourage everyone to do that. You don't just have to come to me.
Yeah.
And if you want, clear out your wardrobe and bring a suitcase to me, and I'll swap it for a credit note. You can. I had a friend of mine came in. He bought 2 suitcases, and I opened it up, and it was all Richard James Savile Row, Lanvin, Prada.
Oh my God.
I was kind of like looking at him, thinking Stone Island, and I was like, "This is about £15,000 worth of clothes." And he went, "Yeah." He goes, "That parka over there, can I get one of them?" And I was like, "Yeah." and that shirt with the sequins on the back, can I get one for my wife? I went, "Yeah." He goes, "Then you got a deal." So he was over the moon, and he said that the sense of relief that he had by clearing out all his old clothes that he never wears, and getting hold of something from me, and I signed it and wrote his name on it. He was like,
so cool.
It was like, he was like, "This is one of the happiest days of my life." I was like, "Oh mate, that's sweet."
It's like, because I buy a lot of clothes because this jacket I bought from a little French brand, and I found on Instagram, and she buys her fabric from, you know, LVMH do that scheme where they just sell off their old fabric their unused fabric to young designers, and she makes little jackets and things. And so I'm quite into that now. I like to find brands that do something like that, because it feels better to me than buying something that's fully. Did you know what I mean?
I think it's our duty, everyone here that loves fashion, because the number one thing that we're not going to do is we're not going to stop loving fashion.
I was going to ask you that, because you clearly still love it, and I still love it, and I feel guilty about loving it, but I'm trying to find a way of consuming that makes me feel less guilty. You know?
I wanted to provide. I felt guilty for years about it, even when I go shopping, like, you know, and everything comes in plastic, and I stopped buying from supermarkets, and I go and buy things from the market in a brown paper bag, and I put the paper bag in recycling rather than plastic. And I've always worn vintage clothes. I've always felt, never been into conspicuous consumption. I thought, you know what, I have to do something about this before it's too late, before I'm too old. If I create a brand that doesn't produce any clothing, that takes existing stock or takes dead stock fabric, then it make it easier and more fun to buy sustainable clothes.
Exactly.
And if I do it, then anyone can do it.
And that was the question I was going to ask before I open up to the audience to pose their questions to you, Stuart. I mean, I know we'll have brands large and small in the audience, and I think almost particularly for the bigger brands, if you're in a big company, how do they take the inspiration for what you're doing and take it back to a big company and say, look, this is something we could do?
I think it's very important for anyone who's working in a bigger brand to take on board that a change is coming, and more and of course they can carry on doing what they want to do. There is government legislation that's going to come in that's regulating it, and if they don't follow that legislation, there will be fines. But they will also find that people used to ask me about how did All Saints go from like a small to like, I surreptitiously targeted Gen Z. I used to send kids out to local universities and colleges with a flyer with free beer, DJs, come to a shop opening. And my business partner at the time was like, what are you inviting all these kids for? They haven't got any money. But they all turned up and they bought T-shirts and they bought Jesus Loves You belts.
Yeah.
Within 3 to 4 years, they were all earning 40, 50 grand a year, and every single penny they spent was in All Saints. And these other brands need to be aware that Gen Z are not going to carry on with this. I mean, of course, there are some people that are going to buy all this crap from Primark and Zara, whatever, and there are going to be people that buy from Shein and Temu. But I believe a huge proportion of Gen Z are going to move away. There are some films coming out. There's a film coming out by a friend of mine called Let There Be Naked. It talks about polyester. Polyester is actually carcinogenic. Our skin is the largest organ on our body. No one here is wearing knickers or pants made out of polyester. They all have to have a cotton gusset because we are. It's actually poison. Yeah. So we shouldn't be wearing polyester. You shouldn't be wearing polyester dresses. We should look for alternatives like Tencel or even rayon or whatever. We need to move in acrylic sweaters. Everybody knows that they buy. You see a bus going by at Christmas with a H&M, £10, big fluffy sweater. You buy it and you wear it out to the pub and you're sweating because you're wearing a plastic bag. That just happens to have been shredded into tiny fibres and then knitted together. It is a plastic bag. You shouldn't be wearing it. It's not fit for human consumption. So, and I think the press and everyone else, I think the Instagram and all that, social media, is making the general public aware that we shouldn't be eating shit and we shouldn't be wearing shit. We need to look at everything, what we do, because the two most important businesses in the world are food and clothing, because you have to eat in the morning and you have to wear clothes. And if you wear interesting clothes, you'll have an interesting life. And if you pick wisely, you'll want to wear those clothes for life and you'll treasure them and you won't just chuck them in the bin after 2 wears. And so, we always talk about the world cannot afford fast fashion. But people say to me, it's all right for you, your clothes are too expensive. If you buy something from me, you'll be wearing it in 10 years. The number one word when I created All Saints in my head was longevity. And there are people that still have clothes from 30 years ago. I'm sure. That they still wear or their kids now wear. We should be thinking about the long term, not the short term.
I was going to think I've got an old sort of army jacket from All Saints that I still pull out every now and then and pull on. It just goes with everything, and it's great. Yeah. That
was the idea. I think if you look at the things that were on the catwalk as well, none of it is so over the top that you're going to regret buying it. It's something that you're going to treasure for life. That's what I try and do with every single thing that I do.
And this time round, doing a fashion brand, still enjoying it, still loving it, still motivated?
I wake up every morning and think, what the hell am I doing? But I then get out of bed because my partner, my girlfriend, is the set decorator for Bridgerton, and she loves it, but it's so hard work, and she rings me every day with, I've got this problem and that problem and all, and my go-to saying in life is get on with it. So get up and get on with it. If I could create the looks for Reese and then create All Saints and then create Stuart Trevor and now create this. You know why? Because I got out of bed and I got on with it. I just, force yourself to do something and push yourself and dreams can come true. I dreamt about doing this as a little boy and I made it happen.
You manifested, as they say these days. You manifested, as they say these days.
If you really believe in it, it's not. People ask me all the time, they ring, send me messages going, how do I start my own label? And how do you make a huge pile of money out of the clothing business? I always say, well, you start with an enormous pile of money because most people lose money. So I don't recommend that you go off and start your own business. Find a business that you really like, contact them, ring them again and again and again and try and go and visit them and beg them to work for them. That's how you get a job. If you don't just send off your CV or apply on LinkedIn and hope that you're going to get the dream job, because people are too busy. You know, actually go and visit them and tell them how much you love them and how much you'd love to work for them. And maybe you'll get your dream job.
Yeah, and maybe you'll get listened in your company. Now, chief question asker here, it is time to open it up. I'm going to, thank you, you get a prize for good questions. So, first question for Trevor here. Stuart Trevor.
Everyone does that.
Everyone does that. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can. Go ahead.
Loudly.
Closer?
Yeah.
Keep it close, yeah.
So what path do you think sustainability will go down? That of groundbreaking innovation or...
Hold it closer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, loudly.
Okay. So what path do you think sustainability will go down? That of groundbreaking innovation or stepping back and reassessing the current ways we do business? I particularly love what you're doing because you realize that there are certain behaviors that we can't and we won't change. You adapted and then you decided to build a great recognizable brand out of a bad thing. But that solution is predicated on the existence of a problem, which in this case is overproduction to cut down marginal costs.
So when I started this 2 years ago, people told me they thought I was insane. Here I am 2 years later. I have an incredible business that's definitely going places. People thought in the beginning when they first heard of Uber that, I love London cabs, black cabs. I'm not going to get an Uber and look at Uber. It's a taxi company that doesn't own any taxis.
Yeah.
Airbnb is a hotel company that doesn't own any hotels. That completely transformed the way that the hotel industry works, or people that that had a second home could rent out a second home and things like this. There's new technology and new innovation, and I think that there are things that people might in the beginning think, it's a fad, it's just a trend or whatever. I don't think so. I think it's the future of fashion. I think that, as I talk quite a lot about this as well, that, Vivienne Westwood and Alexander McQueen, they didn't start out by going to the #1 fabric mills in the world and showing at the #1 show in the world and selling at the #1 department store in the world. They started out going to fabric warehouses and markets like Shepherd's Bush Market and buying 4 meters of cashmere off a roll in a market, and they worked within their means. So, it is quite easy to work within your means and create a sustainable brand by buying, finding vintage pieces and upcycling them and doing things to them. And you can set up your own little Instagram shop, and I think more and more brands should do that. I keep getting contacted by big brands like North Face and Patagonia, Canada Goose. They've all got loads of returns that they don't know what to do with. North Face had 10,000 jackets they didn't know what to do with because they've had them returned. They need, things wrong with the sleeves. Well, we can patch them up and replace the sleeves or make something really interesting out of other people's waste. It is predicted. All the largest manufacturers in the world, I've been contacted by them in Portugal that make for North Face and Patagonia and Canada Goose and all. They're all preparing for a huge change in the business because they know that it can't carry on as it is. It can't carry on with, huge corporations like ASOS, 970 million turnover and 130 million losses, 2 years on the trot. They're overproducing by hundreds of millions of pounds. And the worst thing is lots of that stuff, they just look at it and go, I'll just send it to landfill. Just send it to Ghana. They can get rid of that. We don't need to worry about it. All of that is going to change. I'm going to Ghana in May, invited by the Prime Minister of Ghana and the largest waste management company in the world to talk about how we can tackle these problems. And we're putting tech in that is going to register who the worst offenders are. And unfortunately, because it's a company that I love, I've always loved, Marks and Spencer's is probably the biggest, the worst offender and all that, because they're, obviously, but they're also the largest garment manufacturer in the UK. But I look at it, I buy Marks and Spencer's underwear and socks for 30 years. Recently bought some for myself, for my kids to give me for Christmas. And I wear it and I take them off and my feet are covered in black hairs because they're using really poor quality yarn now. And they're obviously trying to, every penny counts in that industry, but they're now using really shit yarn and it's not fit for purpose. And those socks, I mean, I'm just one person, but they're selling 1 million pairs. People are not going to wear those socks. They're going to chuck them in the bin. They're going to end up in landfill. All of that's got to stop. People like M&S, we're going to go to them and say, listen, mate, you're the worst offender. What are you going to do about it? We're going to hold them to account.
Very good. Any more questions for Stuart? Yep. Gentleman next to... Yeah.
Hello, Stuart. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
Nice. Well, I actually think I'll be a perfect fit for your brand because I hand paint clothing, and I was hoping if maybe I could get
Hold it
like...
closer.
Hold it a bit closer.
I was hoping maybe if I could get like a mentorship for you at some point because I painted this myself, and I think it'll be a perfect fit for your brand.
Very good. Yeah. Come and see us.
Okay.
Everyone's welcome to,
Well,
follow us on Instagram and come and see us and show me what you're doing.
Taking your advice there, basically just go and tell somebody.
Yeah.
So, well done. Any more? Yeah. We've got...
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hold it right to your mouth.
How do you promote sustainable practices in your community or customers beyond selling products?
We talk about it non-stop. As I'm saying, I did a talk yesterday, I did one on Monday, I'm doing another one on Friday. I try and explain to everyone that you don't have to be me, you can do it yourself. I talk to fabric mills, to manufacturers, small designers out here, and follow Sustainable Matters people. If you put Sustainable Matters as a hashtag on your Instagram and on TikTok, you will find there are lots of people talking about it. We talk about it non-stop because we want to encourage everybody to buy and produce things in a much more sustainable way. I mean, nobody's perfect. As I'm saying, we're never going to stop people from wanting to buy clothing or possessions or go on holiday or whatever. But if you can think about doing it in the most sustainable way, there are sustainable ways to do things better for the planet, and I think it's our duty. Everyone here, I honestly believe that we have to do it because if you look at, I mean, you can see what's going into landfill from satellites all over the world, in Ghana, in Indonesia, in Chile, and this is right now. So in 40 years' time, when my kids are my age, what is the planet going to look like? If we don't do something about it now, everyone's aware of, the floods in Spain and the wildfires in LA, and the climate change is happening. We need to stop buying from polyester garments because that's all oil and gas. It all comes from oil and gas, and the production of these creates huge carbon emissions, and all of it is affecting our planet. We need to do something about it. So we talk about it non-stop. It's not just about, I'm not just here trying to sell clothes. It's not about money. I'm not interested in money. I've never been interested in money. If I was, I wouldn't be sat here. I'd be in the city ripping everyone off like Rishi Sunak.
On a boat somewhere drinking
Keir
cocktails
Starmer.
or something. Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, that's a very nice way to end it, and I really appreciate the opportunity to chat to you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you again to everybody here for coming and listening. I think you're probably going to find it hard to escape from here once you get off this stage because there are people ready to pounce, but Stuart, you're a legend, and what an honour to speak to you. Thank you so much, and
Thanks
let's have a round
for
of
having me.
applause.
Thank you for coming.